The rain wakes me up. A disgusting, leaden morning amidst the mist and persistent drizzle. Everything hurts. I can't tell anymore if it's from yesterday's fight or the night spent on a thick, forked branch. It's cold. I untie the cord that was holding me to the trunk and descend to the ground, wrapped in a woolen cloak. I've heard so much about this cloak. That natural wool keeps you warm, even when wet. That, under the rain, the fibers contract, making the cloak waterproof. Maybe so. But by then, it's already completely soaked. Just like the person wearing it. My ankle joint hurts, all my muscles ache, there are scratches on my forearm, and my back is burned. I'm wet, freezing, and desperately hungry. The other person speaks up just as I stand among the ferns, giving my blister some relief. He's sitting at the edge of the woods on a wooden, single-axle cart, pulled by a sturdy creature vaguely reminiscent of a donkey or an okapi. It was a beautiful fight, he says. Maybe even worthy of a song. What fight? I ask. He's thin, covered in a hooded cloak, and holds half a slab of bacon in his hand, from which he slices small pieces with a curved knife held in a curved hand. I calmly fasten my trousers. I'll manage in case of anything. I'll manage before he dismounts from the goat or reaches for anything sharp. I ignore him. Here, approaching a lone person while sleeping is considered impolite and dangerous. Actually, he insulted me. At least, as far as I know. I have no idea how he spotted me amidst the dense foliage and branches. That's why I'm actually angry at myself. I start gathering some right sticks for the campfire. There are a few plants here whose dried branches will catch fire even when they are damp. The other person chews on his morsels, observing me with those incredible eyes filled with darkness. He must be old. It's hard to tell. After all, here a person in their 40s is considered old. His gaunt face is lined with wrinkles and somehow looks weary. The flint chute sparks. I blow on the ember, adding layers of bark, bits of decayed wood, and needles until a flame appears. As I warm my hands by the crackling fire, I think about coffee. Espresso in a tiny cup with a layer of creamer on top. He still sits and puts pieces of fat into his mouth with the tip of his knife. Sit by the fire, I invite him. I could have killed you, he replies with his mouth full. But you didn't. Sleeping in a tree is clever. Apparently not clever enough. Will you keep shouting from that cart? I prefer to observe the world from the box. Higher up, better view. I retrieve my belongings from the hiding place. Bags, satchels, and finally, the saddle on which I sit by the fire. At least it serves a purpose. I find strips of salted, dried meat wrapped in parchment. I'll cook them in boiling water. There's no coffee, but at least I'll have something like broth. At least it's something warm in the stomach. Who lived there? I gesture towards the hill where the burnt remains of the station's outpost loom. The palisade partially survived, but a column of grey smoke still rises from there. He shrugs. No one. Everyone knows it's a cursed place. A charm spot. Like many. Only fools enter such places. I'm looking for someone. I'm a stranger in these parts. I'm looking for those who were strangers like me and got lost. I haven't been here long either. An adventure. He uses the word hansing. An adventure, specifically a pirate raid. Literally, the pathway to happiness. He extends his hand with a knife, pointing to the forest on the other side of the glade, where a stream rustles. There's the trail. It leads to the first homestead. That's where Grisma Mad Scream lives. Will he know anything about my relatives? Probably not. But you can only go there from here. Grisma Mad Scream, surrounded by a spiky palisade of ashen wood, sits in his ancestral manner, trembling in fear, along with a handful of his tribe, at what comes out of the woods. The first one who lives beyond the wastelands of dread. Go and give him a gift. Give him your loot. What loot? The man on the cart points to the bundle lying nearby. A bundle made from an old blanket, partially soaked in blood. A bundle that still twitches slightly. Sometimes he sends someone into the forest. Someone too young to be afraid and too foolish to refuse, to free him from more phantoms. From the children of the cold mist. The awakened. But they will never stop coming. It's a bad time. The war of the gods. It wasn't like this in the past. But give it to him as a trophy. Let him hang it on the ring and tell his people he's a great styresman. I finally have some embers now, so I can place a cup of water and a strip of meat on them. I don't know what you're talking about. I thought it was just a toad. The other one laughs approvingly. I am Raven Shadow. I sell magical things. Do you want a dagger that brings a curse to its owner? A stone that returns? I have road stones, amulets of the black dream, feathers of the thunderbird. I have everything. I need a horse. I don't trade in horses. I trade in things that do. Do you have something that can turn a person into stone? Time? I have plenty of time. Where can I buy horses? Where someone sells them. I think I'll see you again sometime. Find your way. Find your way is a traditional farewell, at least according to the culture and ontology of the coast, authored by Vuko. They call me Nich Sefni, I call after him. I can see that. But to me, you're tree sleeper, he shouts over his shoulder, and his creaking cart descends into the hollow, crushing white fern flowers with its wheels. I am left alone. The rain murmurs monotonously in the leaves, my campfire hisses reluctantly under the drops falling from the branches. Somewhere high in the sky, the screech of a predatory bird can be heard. I sip the thin broth and begin to organize my action plan. It's a futile, complicated task because I really don't know what to do next. Let's take this path. Wherever the unfortunate researchers went, they certainly didn't cut straight through the forest, so neither will I. I'll take the only path and see how someone called Grisma Madscream is doing. I need to have a horse. I have enough money, not even counting what I looted at the station. I have a belt stuffed with neatly stacked piles of gold and silver coins, hanging from my hips like a well-fed boa constrictor. I just need a horse shop. And I need to know what happened. It's even more important than finding the survivors. That evening in the Darkmoor dining room. A solemn occasion. A fire burns in the stone fireplace, and we sit along an elongated table in the candlelight, amidst silverware, roasted partridges, baked potatoes, and of course, the infamous Yorkshire pudding. Glacier wipes his lips with a napkin and with a commanding hand gesture, orders the wine to be poured for us. They've changed the premise of the mission. Only one person goes, he finally says. The team remains, the training continues, we await developments. Politics, he adds, explaining the tone. We sit in silence at the table, looking at each other and then at Glacier. He takes a sip of sherry and turns to one of the stewards, who hands him a tray with a red-sealed envelope and a silver dagger lying next to it. Over the past year, we've grown accustomed to the rituals, the odd pseudo-medieval, quasi-Masonic atmosphere. From rugged work clothes to tuxedos and evening gowns that suddenly replace coarse overalls. It no longer amuses anyone. Everyone taps into skills we've been honing during training. While Glacier is busy breaking the seal with the help of the blade, Kaufman starts adding more stuffing to his plate. I keep turning the silver goblet in my fingers and sniff the sherry. Cavallino fiddles with his teeth, and Deirdre nibbles on a grapevine. Everyone looks relaxed and casual. Mr. Corvenac, we thank you for your cooperation. Mr. Corvenac, Bosun Harding will assist you in packing your belongings, and the driver is waiting in the hall downstairs. I remind you that the highest level of state secrecy applies to you. Please forget everything you heard and saw here, except for one thing. That we won't forget about you. Thank you and goodbye. In the deep silence, the echoing footsteps of Renee are heard resounding under the vault. When the massive doors close with an empty thud, no one says a word. Mr. Kaufman, Mr. Nilsson, and Mrs. D. Kraut, assurance. For now. Ms. Mulligan, Mr. Cavallino, Mr. Rogowski, Mr. Kohutek, and Mr. Dartlow, the backup team. Silence. Mr. Drakkainen goes. For a fraction of a second, everyone's nerves snap. In our own way, of course. Nilsson straightens up with relief and takes a sip of wine. Dartlow clenches his teeth, and you can see the muscles of his jaw pulsating. Die Kraut looks surprised, with a look as if she's been struck by lightning. Deirdre briefly looks like a Valkyrie. Tight lips, a jutted chin, and a sparkle of diamonds in her eyes. I feel nothing. Nothing, except for the scent of Yorkshire pudding. Even Kohutek stops eating for a moment. Mr. Drakkainen, please come after me, he says. The rest of you, please continue your dinner in a more relaxed atmosphere. Bon appetit, thank you, and good night. Please stay positive. The mission will continue. Do you have any idea why? He asks, inquiringly, now sitting behind his desk and lighting a pipe. No, Commodore. Because you are the oldest. You still remember a world where we were the only life in the universe. You recall times when there was no hypergravital drive, and whole space exploration was just an uncertain experiment. You have it all in your head. You are a child of the old world, born with the belief that there was only Earth, that we were the only intelligent beings in the universe, and that the speed of light was unbreakable. In my opinion, you will adapt better to them and their mentality because they think the same way, measuring their world by their standards. Besides, your mother was Polish, your father Finnish, and you were raised in Croatia. Cultural shock is a daily occurrence for you. Moreover, you, unlike few others, have made a religion out of independence. You don't believe in the state, regulations, or the collective reason. You're a loner. You believe in your moral right and common sense. The plan was to send a team, and then you would have stayed on Earth. But we can send only one. One person. I believe you will survive. At least there's some chance. Now I will tell you something that only about 6 people besides myself know. This won't even be the highest level of secrecy. If you breathe a word to anyone, even Corporal Mulligan, both of you will be killed. I'm sorry for this tone, but it's absolutely necessary. It's known that you are to find a research group or determine what happened to them, evacuate anyone possible, erase any traces, and if necessary, rectify any damage they might have caused if there was an unauthorized contact with a Xeno-civilization. You already know that. What you don't know is that you have received official authorization to use any means as deemed appropriate based on the situation. Do you understand what that means? I take a sip of whiskey. A license to kill. Yes. If you are forced to kill, you have the right to do so. I take full responsibility. There's another matter. They encountered something there that we can't even properly name, let alone explain. Something that could be incredibly dangerous or, at the very least, of the utmost importance. I take another sip of whiskey and remain silent. There is magic there, Lodowego finally says, as if with severe embarrassment and distaste. At least that's how it appears in the reports you'll review. Please return from there alive and tell me that we fell victim to an illusion, trickery, or the side effects of an unknown physical phenomenon. I hope that's the case. Or return and tell me that the universe has gone mad and our world is about to become a hell. The path is narrow, rocky, and overgrown with grass. It leads downhill, next to a gurgling stream. I walk. I feel like a tourist. The only exhausting thought is that no matter where I go, there's no shelter waiting for me, no bathroom with hot water, and no clean sheets. I think about Duval, merged into the tree. Duval, whom I condemned to a slow death inside a chopped trunk. How long will it take? Until the tree rots away? Who knows how long it takes for a tree to die? The trail is barely visible, more like a grass-overgrown path. But at least I know I won't get lost in some impenetrable wilderness. I keep heading east, parallel to the coast, so I'll eventually come across people. After some time, I start finding fireplaces, round, black spots of charcoal and ash. Old, all of them, but apparently along this stream someone did camp from time to time. Fires were lit right by the path, as if travelers were afraid to venture deeper into the forest. The stays were hasty. I find a silver, ornate cup, a horn cup for drinking, a few bone buttons, and a decent small axe embedded in the trunk of a fallen tree. Twice I stumble upon unburied, scattered corpses. Once, a dried-up body that had been lying there for at least 6 months, with shreds of clothing and a crude, lamella buckler that had survived. Nearby lies a damaged wooden shield and a rusty sword with a polygonal, conical hilt and a similarly massive head. A sword from the coast, poorly crafted. Then again, fragments of an old, bleached skeleton in the stream's current. Neither of them has a head, neither belongs to someone born on Earth. I look around, but all I see are thousands of grey trunks, stretching to infinity like a colonnade of ash trees. My coat stiffens, gets heavy, and probably indeed no longer lets water through, not that it matters much now. I'd only stay dry in the spots protected by the arranged shingle-like armor, but there, I'm sweaty instead and everything itches. In the afternoon, I start smelling smoke. Somewhere, fires are burning. After a while, I hear dogs barking and cattle mooing. At least, that's what I call it. When I see a tree, I call it an ash or a pine or oak. It's better than Midgardian Welwitskia or Dragomirium. I hear horse chirping ending with a drawn-out howl, resembling a hyena's hiccup, and I think the dog barks, even though it neither barks nor is it a dog, but rather a creature functionally closest to a marsupial tiger. I slip on wet stones and roots, cursing my possessions. I'd gladly toss everything into the bushes, but that's a stupid idea. Each one of these things might save my life someday. The manor stands on a hill. In front of it, you can see a river bend where my stream flows into. The glade has been cleared, and the whole area is covered with stumps of trees once felled. From where I stand, I can see a ground wall topped with sharpened logs. Above it, sunken roofs covered with weathered shingles. Around the wall, here and there, stand low, dark log huts without windows, looking like they've been weighed down by heavy thatch. I spot people. Several figures rush out of the forest and race towards the fortifications, screaming. A few meters from me, ankle-deep in the stream, stands a girl with a white, wet rag in her hand. I see her pale, terrified face, wide eyes filled with darkness. Clumps of damp, dark purple hair cling to her face, her long blue dress is also wet and clings to her body. She stands like that for a second, then lets out a piercing scream and throws herself into a panicked sprint uphill, her bare feet flashing. All that remains on the shore is a wooden bucket filled with crumpled rags. Inside the fort, they are already closing the gate. Someone rushes inside with 2 roaring, furry cows, massive like bison, with sprawling horns. Shouts, barking dogs, and above it all, the prolonged voice of some kind of horn, sounding like a mammoth roar. They sure do love guests here. Yet good people live here. A crooked, wooden shelter has been erected by the path. A simple hut made of logs, covered with a roof. It has only 3 walls, and in front of the entrance, one can see a circle of stones and a pile of wet charcoal. Further on, a semicircular stone wall has been built to reflect the heat inside. There's also a stack of firewood, meticulously protected from the rain by a layer of branches. Inside, there's a table made from half logs and 2 benches. What more do you need? You don't just come to someone's house unannounced and knock on the gate. You sit and wait for them to come out to you. If they don't come out, you have a place to sleep, a fire to make, and a roof over your head. Rest, eat, sleep, and then be on your way. It's a pretty nice custom, all things considered. Firstly, I put that damn saddle on the bench and take off the wet gear. I leave the creature's severed hand outside. Let it soak. It's supposed to be my admission fee, a kind of I freed you from the monster. Maybe I can find out what it is? I light a fire under the roof's overhang. It requires Benedictine patience, coaxing the embers, adding tiny needles and splinters, then shielding the delicate flames from the wind. 20 minutes later, I have a roaring fire that isn't scared of the pouring rain. I sit on the table with my legs crossed, smoke my precious Virginia tobacco, and dream of tea. No luck here. I wasn't provided with tea. Only now it strikes me how many useful things could have survived at the station. Like tea, for instance. They surely hadn't drunk all the tea, and I burned everything. The manor on the hill appears abandoned, dark, gloomy, and silent. I feel like I'm being closely watched, but deep down, I'm glad they decided to ignore me. I change my underwear and pull out dry pants from my bags. I also find a half fur with a hood and start going through my supplies. I have bouillon cubes in some greasy leather pouch. I have some Carpathian smoked cheese, dried sausages, strips of meat, and some dried bread wrapped in parchment. A glass jar of honey, sealed with a wide cork. A bit of pressed dried fruit with nuts, a few bars of halva, but no packaging, they're wrapped in leaves, probably grape leaves. They couldn't give me sugar. That would have been terribly dangerous. But they could have given me some halva or pressed figs, or a piece of cork. As far as I know, neither almonds, figs, nor cork oaks grow here, so what harm would it do to give me a bit of tea? Couldn't they have wrapped it in tea leaves? I also find the items I smuggled illegally, as well as those they gifted to me last moment. But no trace of coffee or tea there as well. To my joy, I find 3 bars of chocolate, a bit of tobacco, 1 bottle of rakicha, and another one of rum, both plastic and flat. I'd sooner die than throw them away. Plastic is a wonderful thing. Lightweight, unbreakable, and airtight. Lev Kovic gave me plum brandy, and I guess it was Dartlow who provided the navy rum. I unscrew the metal container and assemble my fishing gear. The line is made of braided horsehair, but well, at least the hooks and weights are normal. They could have fancied to equip me with bone hooks, after all. Someone couldn't be bothered, thank God. Then I cut myself a stick and go fishing. Fish are outright visible. They glide just above the bottom, hiding behind the stones, but they aren't interested in earthworms, bread balls, or bits of meat. They're plump and well-fed, and they're starting to get on my nerves, ignoring any kind of bait I'd try. I'd have to attempt making some sort of spear. It would be worth assembling a bow, but I really don't feel like it. I'm already walking around like a mule loaded with gear. It's way more convenient to keep it in parts. I boil water with honey, spiked with a bit of plum brandy. Besides that, today's dinner will involve chocolate, a piece of sausage, and a piece of dried bread. I've read millions of books set in fairy tale worlds, set in pseudo-medieval settings, just like this one, and everywhere you could enter a tavern, put a coin on the table, and shout, "Innkeeper, a beer." I've always wanted to do that. I kindle the fire as much as I can. I want to dry my clothes, but I also want to show that I'm not one of those who skulk around stealthily. It seems like there's a feverish council going on in the manor. If only I could be there, I'd vote to leave the strange outsider alone at least until tomorrow. I should find traces of my lost lambs, but so much time has passed that one night won't make a difference. And I really don't want to make new contacts now. I'm a bit nervous, and I'm also tired. I like this shelter. In Finland, they put up very similar ones in parking lots by the beach. I'll have dinner, gaze into the fire, think, take another sip of plum brandy, and I'll enjoy stretching out on this wide table, covered with a blanket, with the saddle under my head. Why would that bother anyone? I feel someone's watching me. All the time. When I stir my strange grog, add more wood to the fire, or cut the tough sausage. Penetratingly, inquisitively. I can only see rain-soaked bushes, the silent dark manor bristling with stakes, and the mist. It's getting cold. Dusk is slowly settling in. They are probably observing me from somewhere, from the top of the palisade or through some shooting holes. That's fine by me. And then I notice the child.